Set between Christmas and New Year in 1997 New York, you play as Aya Brea, a rookie officer who gets embroiled in a series of events to stop the supernatural being known as Eve from destroying humanity via spontaneous combustion. After being the only survivor of Eve's first attack in an opera house at Carnegie Hall by masquerading as a singer called Melissa Pierce, Aya chases being backstage before being told that her DNA is unique also, and that her mitochondria needs a little bit more time to develop. More on that long word later. Following her down a hole into the sewers, it's apparent that the wildlife in New York are being affected by this also. Cue a fight with a mutated alligator. Surviving the fight, Aya returns to the surface where she's met by her partner in the NYPD, Daniel. After a short explanation, they make their way back to precinct number 17 to speak with Chief Baker and begin to investigate the cause of this, the nature of Eve, and just what this mitochondria is. The next day, Aya and her partner, definitely not Danny Glover, go to the Museum of Natural History to speak to a Dr. Hans Klump. We learn that mitochondria are parasite-like organisms that live inside every person and are responsible for the release of energy in our bodies, capable of discharging up to 200,000 volts of electricity. As this can also translate to heat energy, it's feasible that Eve unlocked the potential of the millions of mitochondria in the audience at the opera, causing them all to spontaneously combust and be left nothing more than charred corpses and, in some cases, literal puddles of fluid. As they are their own unique organisms, mitochondria can evolve and mutate at 10 times the speed of human body cells, able to dictate the growth and aging process of the human it's living in. It's entirely possible that the cells have a consciousness of their own and put us, humanity, on a timer. Science, bitch. Once Eve's name is mentioned and the connection between her and the theoretical First Lady of Humanity is realised, Klump is no longer interested in the conversation and returns to his studies. Upon returning to the precinct, the team learned that Melissa Pierce, the lady that transformed into Eve, is set to put on a Christmas Day performance in Central Park. We also learn that Danny's son and wife are going to the very same performance. In a rush, they go towards Central Park. However, due to Eve's control over the area, Danny's arm sets on fire upon attempting to walk in. Rushing through Central Park Zoo and fighting monkeys, polar bears, and other manner of mutated wildlife, Aya reaches the theatre but is too late. Eve begins the performance and the crowd all begin to turn into mush. Harrowing stuff. Chasing Eve through the park, they eventually end up in a fight on a horse-drawn carriage. Fun thing is, the horse is literally on fire. So after a long, drawn-out fight, Eve causes the carriage to tip and Aya is knocked unconscious. For our partner, Danny's son had luckily left the park earlier in the evening as he was feeling ill and his mother was acting weird. The mother is now unfortunately gloop and the island of Manhattan is being evacuated due to the continuous paranormal occurrences. However, one man managed to sneak in after dealing with some frankly racist shit. Waking in what seemed to be a crack den in the middle of Soho, Aya is met by both Daniel and the man who managed to sneak in past the evacuation. He introduces himself as Maeda, a Japanese scientist who helps the officers understand the origins of Eve and her goals. Over in Japan, a scientist tried to cultivate the cells of his wife after she was involved in a car crash, leaving her brain dead. However, he incidentally caused the mitochondria in her cells to overdevelop and take over the body. It is believed that the mitochondria are dispersed cells from a dormant life form that is intent on being the dominant species on Earth by bringing to life the perfect being. However, Eve's attempt in Japan failed. She manipulated the scientist to give her his sperm by faking the appearance of his now dead wife and gave birth to what was supposed to be the perfect being. Although, due to the scientist's DNA containing mitochondria that was deemed to be earmarked for extinction should the ultimate being come to be, the offspring was struggling with a rebellion within its own body, and the scientist was ultimately forced to destroy both himself and the creation in order to prevent the inevitable outburst of energy. Anyway, Maeda believes that Eve has made her way to New York in search of the perfect sperm needed to create the perfect being and end humanity. With the discovery of Aya's apparent immunity to Eve's control over the mitochondria, they seek out Dr. Klump once more. Arriving at the museum, Clump takes samples of Aya's blood and it shows that the nuclei in her cells are actively fighting and neutralizing the mitochondria that are in her body. Armed with this newfound knowledge, the trio return to the precinct to find that it's been attacked by Eve. After a struggle and many dead officers, including our poor Torres, Aya reaches the top of precinct number 17 and successfully stops a mutated Shiva from killing both Ben and Chief Baker from almost certain death. A post-fight scene seems to indicate that Baker has a heart attack not long after the battle. Maybe stop eating the contents of your bakery and you'd be fine, eh? With no time for recovering from the attack on the precinct, Aya and Maida make their way to St. Francis Hospital in the hopes of stopping Eve from getting sperm to create the perfect being. On their arrival, they realise that they are too late and the hospital has been taken over by the mutants. Not only this, but there are still staff and patients that weren't able to evacuate for whatever reason. Not long after exploring the hospital, Eve cuts the power off to the place and accords on the elevator she was using, just about getting out from the basement unscathed. Restoring the power to the place and having some flashbacks of this place, Aya gets to a research room near the rooftop where she finds a file containing information on not only her, but her mother and her sister Maya. We learn that her mother's name is Mariko and she died due to a cardiac arrest after an accident. This is real interesting considering that someone named Mariko Anzai was the recipient of a liver from Kiyomi Nagashima, the wife of the scientist that the lady was overtaken by the mitochondria to create Eve. The pages concerning Maya are missing. On top of all of this, a note on the fridge shows that Dr. Clump was part of an artificial sperm development team at this very hospital. Upon reaching the roof, it was clear that Aya was too late and Eve had managed to get some sperm from the lab. A pretty cool cutscene plays where the US Air Force tries to get involved and take out Eve, but she easily handles these by overloading their mitochondria while Aya is stuck fighting a literal spider woman. Once that's taken care of, Aya escapes by jumping from the roof before the jet crashes directly into it. Reuniting with Danny and Maida, they learn that Eve was spotted going towards the museum multiple times over the past few weeks, presuming that it was to meet with Dr. Clump about the perfect being. Back at the precinct, temporary Chief Danny gives us the directive to search the entirety of Manhattan to hunt down both Eve and Dr. Clump and hopefully prevent the perfect being from coming to reality. The first stop was Chinatown, where Maida was there to meet Aya and warn her of mutant slime that appears to have gone into the sewers below. After an extensive search, Aya witnesses the slime entering the water supply of the city. Determined to stave off any potential infection, Aya uses a control panel to pump the slime away. After further investigation of the sewers and in turn part of the subway network, Eve is nowhere to be found. The next stop was a warehouse by the shore where a police officer outside informs Aya that Eve is inside. She directs him to get Danny and the others and she heads in alone. And that is the story so far.